morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out to join this webinar. We're going to cover a number of topics with a combination of a little bit of PowerPoint, but mainly going into the product to show you the capabilities that we've added in recent times. There's a 14-day unlimited license available to you for any testing purposes that you wish to carry out. My name's Simon Armett. I'm a pre-sales engineer at Runecast. I've been with Runecast now for just over 2 years. If you've got any questions after this, please take a note of my email address, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have, should you not ask them at the end of this webinar. So, again, we all know that Runecast is an AI-powered patent solution. We basically look at operational side of things, so the DevOps side of things, and we also look at the sort of security and compliance side of things as well. We're a fully on-premise solution, so we're secure from that point of view, and we cover a sort of heterogeneous environment. So it's not just VMware, but today our focus is going to be on VMware. So the agenda for today, essentially, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the Agentless OS Scanning for vSphere that we've introduced. So there are a number of caveats around that I'll go into. But essentially, I want to give you sort of an overview as to how it works and the logic behind it. Then we'll talk a little bit about capacity management. So we've started to introduce capacity management around vSphere into the product, and I'll show you some of the aspects of that and the benefits that it can bring to you. Also, we've introduced the upgrade simulation capability to go up to vSphere 8 U2. And of course, quite a big one now, if you're within the European Union, is the Dora Compliance piece, when we're one of the first in the industry to be able to offer this around VMware. So this is just an additional knowledge element that we've added to what it is that we do. And of course, there's the STIG automation for vSphere. So we've expanded our STIG capabilities as well. In addition to that, we've also introduced some additional elements to vulnerability assessment. So that's the Common Vulnerability Scoring System and CISA-KEV, which basically enables you to sort of prioritize how you handle vulnerabilities within your environment. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So secure agentless scanning for VMware workloads. So currently today, as it stands, many of you will know that we have an agent-based scanning capability for VMs, so both Windows and Linux. But essentially having that means, and it's based upon OS query, which in itself is a very, very secure method for scanning VMs. But essentially, there is always a sort of an overhead associated with deploying an agent. So some of the benefits around having agentless, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're implementing it. But one thing that I have to stress, that it is preview pre-release at the moment. So we kind of don't recommend that you deploy it within a production environment as of yet. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. So, one of the benefits around agentless is that it's basically reduced maintenance. You don't have to be sort of updating the agent when the new version comes out. There's a lower overhead on the hosts. It's more simple because you don't have to do any software deployment within the VMs. We give you a bit of scalability. There's obviously fewer compatibility issues in terms of the actual VM operating system that we're installing against. Enables for sort of more rapid deployment, and I'll show you how easy that is in the way that you can take a VM and just by tagging it, essentially bring it into the fold of being agentless. And And of course, you know, the more software that you deploy in an environment, you're basically going to increase an attack surface. You know, because all software has vulnerabilities associated with it. So if you can reduce the amount of software that you deploy within your environment, then you're obviously reducing your attack surface as well. And it enables us to have a broader coverage in the way that we do things. So secure agentless is essentially, I mean, this is a very sort of basic schematic, but essentially what we do is we've introduced an additional component to Runecast, and that's a Runecast scanner. So essentially that kind of like acts like a proxy. So it will sit within your vSphere environment, and it will have visibility to the VMs, okay? And what we'll do is we'll scan, we'll get a list of the workloads, we'll feed those to the scanner. The scanner will then basically initiate a kind of like a VADP snapshot within the vSphere cluster. So it'll take that VM, it will then initiate a snapshot of that VM, mount that VM onto the Runecast scanner, and essentially scan for vulnerabilities. So today, with the first pre-release of this, we're only scanning for vulnerabilities. So none of the other knowledge profiles that you get with the agent-based capability. As I say, it's pre-release at the moment. And essentially, then we can then scan those VMs off host from the snapshot and then start providing the results around that. So essentially, you know, it's a very efficient way of being able to look at your VMs and not have to deploy an agent within them. Now, certainly, you know, it's always prudent to take an holistic approach when it comes to these sorts of things, because, you know, within sort of taking snapshots, there is always an associated overhead with a snapshot. So if you've got a VM that's highly transactional, for example, and you're taking a snapshot of that, then essentially, you know, what you're going to have is you can have a lot of change block tracking playback. So it's always good to take a holistic approach, a combination of agentless and agent-based. Okay, so that's one of the things that we're advising currently with the agentless capability. So another thing that we've introduced is the Dora Compliance check for VMware. So I'll talk a little bit about this as we go along. And we've also increased DISA STIG. So these are the additional elements of DISA STIG that we have now added to the product. Okay, so I'll be able to sort of show you those elements when we go into a demo. Okay, so I hope everybody can see my screen. So I've logged into my demo environment here, and just to sort of demonstrate some of the configuration aspects around agentless, we go into system settings. Now, as I have to reiterate, this is a pre-release, so we're not recommending this for production right at this very moment in time. But essentially, you'll see an additional screen here, which is called Agentless OS Scanning. So here we can click in and say configure Agentless OS Scanning. Here we're giving you a link to download that OVA. So the Runecast Scanner OVA, which you can then deploy into the cluster, into your cluster. And essentially, it's because it's token-based, so it's secure communication from the Runecast to the scanner. We're also providing you with the public key in order to be able to do that. So as part of the installation aspect of that, you have to provide the public key. And then essentially within that cluster to start scanning VMs, you have to basically tag them with the tag name Runecast Agentless Scan. And as soon as you've done that, then essentially they will then be candidates for agentless scan within Runecast. But as I say today, that is only around vulnerabilities. So, you know, you're not going to get the full functionality that you get with essentially the agent-based as of yet, but we're constantly evolving. And within the product, we have also used this box here for you to click to give us your feedback, because as a company, we innovate based upon, our customer requirements and our customer feedback. It's very, very important to us. And if you do require assistance around looking at agentless scanning, please get in touch with your rep, and we can essentially assist you around that. So when we look at vulnerabilities, so within vulnerabilities, the agentless scan elements would appear here. And again, we still give you that a link to be able to essentially report back your feedback on the agentless scanning. Moving forward on that, we've also introduced the capability to look at kind of capacity management. So this is a new feature that we've introduced. If you're already an existing Runecast user with a license around vSphere, you will get that by de facto. So we don't charge any extra for that. So when we look at capacity management essentially will look at your vSphere environment from a cluster perspective. We'll look at CPU usage and CPU ratios, memory usage and memory ratio. So that will give you an analysis at a given point in time as to how your environment is. It will also give you trending and forecasting. So past this date, how do we expect the trends to change within that? So we can choose based upon memory utilization, for example. So memory utilization we predict to be static. And then we give you further stats lower down, basically detailing all those numbers for you. But one of the other benefits that this enables us to do is to essentially look. So say, for example, you've got three nodes in your cluster. And the reason that you may be having 3 nodes is because if you have one node fail, then essentially the other 2 can pick up that load. So we've also introduced a host failure simulation capability here as well. So I can say basically, okay, what will happen from a performance perspective should one of these hosts fail? So I can highlight that, and it will tell me the impact would be on that host failing. So that enables us to do better planning in terms of scaling our environment, because we all know that, our environments are very organic and they're changing, and the demands upon them are placed. So periodically, it enables teams to be able to go in and say, okay, will I still be able to have performance if I should have a failure? So it enables us to do things like that. And if I could say, right, okay, what happens if 2 hosts failed? And it will basically tell you you're going to have performance issues. As part of this, we've also introduced the capability to simulate VM deployments as well. So if the organization says to you, okay, we've got this new application that's coming out, the vendor for this application has said, okay, it's going to take 10 VMs. Each of those VMs essentially needs 4 CPUs and 8 gig of RAM. And we predict memory CPU utilization to be 40% and memory utilization, say, to be 50%. We can simulate what will happen to the environment by deploying those VMs. So it enables for better planning and better scaling of your environments as well. And that's done on a cluster basis. And then we can obviously deactivate that element there. Now, the next topic is in terms of hardware compatibility simulation. So we've introduced being able to, simulating essentially what would happen if we wanted to upgrade to version 8U2. So say, for example, we've got a snow environment here. or a 6.7 environment here, and we want to run an upgrade. So this is basically going to tell us whether there is a driver BIOS mismatch with the drivers based upon the HCL list that we have on the analyzer. So essentially I can say, okay, I want to upgrade to version 8, U2, and I can run a simulation against that. And essentially what that's going to tell me is what I need to do up front in order to ensure that I have a good simulation, a good upgrade. So essentially saying here, not found on the hardware compatibility list. So it means that I can take proactive action before I go and run that upgrade. Also, it enables us to see whether we can repurpose hardware. So rather than having to do that manual check to see if the hardware is compatible with version 8, and I want to repurpose that hardware, I don't want to throw it into landfill yet, then essentially it enables us to go through that in a methodical way to make sure that we're making the best use of our resources. As you all know, we have a number of compliance profiles built into Runecast. So again, Dora is a very important one if you're dealing with financial institutions in the European Union. We are the first to offer this capability to our customers. The first in the industry, in fact. So again, you can choose by the Dora article. Currently today, it's around these product areas, so vSphere, for example. And again, when we click into one of these, there's the original document source from the European Union. We give control description around that. And we give the analysis find as to where we are not Dora compliant within our environment. So, this is in a rapid way, we can start demonstrating and remediating, in fact, to ensure that we're meeting Dora compliance. So again, I can highlight an environment and it will go and generate a Power CLI script for me to then download and deploy as part of my existing change control procedures to ensure that those systems are now meeting Dora. Over and above that, we've also introduced the DISA STIG elements that I mentioned in the slide before. So we've just expanded DISA STIG. So DISA STIG is one of the most stringent security standards, compliance standards that's out there. Now, obviously, in my environment, I don't have vSphere 8 here, but I can basically choose the product area and the section here. So here are all the V7 elements that we've included. And again, we can basically, in a similar fashion, look to see where we're not meeting DISA STIG standards, and we give an issue description around here. And again, there's the original document source from the US military around that. So Dora and DISA STIG may not be so relevant to you as an organization, but as I said, DISA STIG being very, very secure, it doesn't stop you from utilizing elements of it should you wish to do so in your environment. So you may all be aware that we have the ability to do custom profiles. So if you generate a custom profile, essentially that's just a case of going in and creating the custom profile, a container, as it were, for you to scan against. With everything that Runecast does, you always have the option of going into our definition database and building your own knowledge profile. So you can take elements of Dora, you can take elements of DISA STIG, CISA, and so forth, or ISO 27001, and build up your own compliance profile. So this is something that sometimes our customers overlook, but it gives you a lot of flexibility to basically comply to your own internal standards in your environments and basically build and scan against those elements. So it's not just about regulatory compliance a lot of the time. It can be about corporate compliance and corporate standards that you may have in your environment. I've just got one more element to be able to show, and I will get back to those on the Q&A. So let's look at vulnerability. So when if I go back to the main dashboard, in fact, and I'll try to explain it from the main dashboard and then go into vulnerabilities. So with the around vulnerabilities, what we've done is we've introduced the CISA-KEV and the CVSS scoring. So essentially, it enables you to be able to prioritize within your environment which vulnerabilities are known exploited and which, according to the common vulnerability scoring system, are much more important to you. This is a list of the vulnerabilities in my environment across multiple products here. So if we just click on vSphere. So you may notice we have an additional column now that's introduced, and this is the CVSS score, so the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. So we've incorporated that capability to be able to highlight those within the product. But we've also introduced CISA-KEV. So CISA-KEV essentially is a database that essentially lists all the vulnerabilities that have been known to be exploited. So vendors will typically release vulnerabilities, but there's vulnerabilities that they've kind of discovered themselves, okay? So what we can do here is basically say, right, okay, I want to see critical CISA-KEV, yes. So as a security team, I would want to work through those ones first, because when we look into that, CISA-KEV is saying there's reliable evidence that this has been exploited in the wild. So it enables you to sort of, in a methodical way, go through what is important first and foremost. In some instances, we'll also give you a link to the actual vulnerability, so the exploit itself, so you can then go and run that vulnerability, that exploit against your environment as well. So we're giving you that capability. And again, you know, there's the CISA-KEV due dates around that there. And of course, at any point, all of these elements are exportable. So for management information reporting, one of the other screens that I highly recommend that you utilize against all of these things is the detected issues screen. And I just want to show you one quick element to that that will essentially give you some really informative information as to how your environment is changing. So from here, we can do a compare analysis. So I can say, right, from the 1st of November to the 11th of December, how has my environment changed? So if I click compare around that, what it's going to do is basically go and give me a comparative analysis as to what's gone on between that time range, that date range, and then present that information to me. And then once I've got that information, essentially I can then filter again. So again, you can see newly discovered or resolved or impact increased. So as you're working your environment and you're working through the issues, it will give you some sort of report to show you how you're meeting your objectives within the environment. So again, you can basically filter on, say, vulnerabilities, for example, here, and it's just going to list the vulnerabilities for you. So very, very short presentation in terms of, you know, the additional features that we've added to the product based upon the agenda that we have. But again, you know, on the main dashboard, you can see a lot of the elements here. So with respect, so I've had a couple of questions here. With respect to customer management, I see that you can simulate the removal of one or more hosts, but can you also simulate the addition of hosts? No, currently today we can't simulate the addition of hosts, just the removal of hosts. Yes, we do support vSphere 8. And does Agents work with encrypted? That's a question I'll need to double check. I believe currently today it doesn't support encrypted, as far as I'm aware. But that's an anonymous attendee, so I'll have to, if you can email me after this, I'll see if I can get a definitive answer for you on that one. So I'll open up to any questions if anybody has any questions. Is there any elements that people would like to go over again? If anybody's unsure of any elements, please let me know. I'm happy to go over those again. Would you like to? Okay, so someone said Dora. So here's all the elements around Dora that we support. So again, it's just another compliance profile for us in terms of compatibility. In terms of the elements that we support Dora with, that includes Windows, vSphere, vSAN, NXT, and Linux. So if we filter by vSphere here. So again, there's all the relevant Dora articles that you can basically filter on. And essentially, we're listing the elements around Dora here. So here's a Dora article. There's the control description from Dora. And there we have the technical description. There's the original document source around that. And then we're telling you which systems are not Dora compliant. Does that answer the question at all? Can Runecast fix issues directly, or is it a manual task by the admin? So as Runecast as a product, we are non-intrusive, and we've always held that ethos because many organizations already have their existing change control procedures. And if you introduce a product that is basically going to explicitly go and make changes in the background outside of your existing change control procedures, then I think it can get fairly complicated. But what we do offer, adding more and more of this capability, is the ability to essentially have remediation. But the remediation is a script. So here, for example, remediation scripts. So analysis for these systems are not Dora compliant, for example. But we have the ability for you to highlight the system. So I can highlight this one and generate a script. Now, in certain instances, that would be an Ansible script or a Power CLI script, dependent upon what it is that we need to change. But then we give you that capability to download that script. And then essentially it's a bespoke script for that system. And then you deploy that script as part of your existing maintenance windows or change control procedures. So we're not going to put a fly in the ointment and basically automate and go and make changes in the background without a human being making that decision and deploying as part of your existing procedures. Please don't be shy to email if you have any questions after this webinar. We're more than happy to help and answer any queries that you have. Certainly around the agentless scanning, if you need any assistance around that and you would like to basically trial it, then we can assist with that. So Runecast is developed within the European Union. So it's developed in the European Union and office in the UK and offices in Brunei and Czech Republic. Yes, the recording will be available to be viewed at a later stage. So yes, that's certainly it's going to be made available for people to then review again. So I'd like to thank you for your time today. Should you wish to have a 14-day unlimited license to test in your environment, please register with us, download the software, and we'll provide you with a 14-day unlimited license for any testing purposes within your environment. Should you have any queries, please email or get in touch with your account rep or your partner, and we're more than happy to help at any stage. One other question's come up. Is it possible to deploy more than one agentless scanner in a cluster? Yes, it is. Yeah. So you can scale out by adding additional agentless scanners. That's certainly possible, yes. I'd like to thank you for taking the time out this afternoon. I hope you found it useful. Again, if you'd like a direct call, more in-depth discussions, please contact your account rep or your partner, or contact us directly, and we'll be more than happy to help and engage with you. Okay, thank you very much indeed. you.